I connected with a lot of what the speakers today spoke about. In our industry alone, sustainability is a big thing when it comes to design, and researchers showed that a guest is actually willing to spend 30% more on their hotel room if they know that there's sustainable material that's been used to go into design. I also connected a lot with what Aiana said, and my talk today is actually about how brands can focus on finding what I'm calling the happiness quotient. Now, I would like to start by having all of you take a moment to think about your last holiday. What would you say would be the best part? TripAdvisor studied the emotions of travelers at different stages of their journey and found that the highest level of excitement was found at the very beginning, even before they even arrived at their destination. Behavioral science has been used to design customer experiences, and what I want to share with you today is how brands are creating resonating memories that by focusing on those moments of engagement that focus on happiness. Happiness that's created when people look forward to interacting with a brand and looking back fondly at the interaction, post the interaction. Sachin introduced me as a third-generation hotelier, and I've been on a bit of a journey in the last year or so. After working with the family business for about 5 years and previously working as a consultant in the real estate space, looking at hospitality, I was very fortunate to meet a business partner from the Middle East who encouraged me to create a brand that was Indian-inspired, but to create something that we could take to the Middle East and on a global platform from there. A lot of what Diane talked about is relevant to me because we were looking at how we could create a brand that could resonate with the next generation of travelers. What they were looking for was not opulence, but understatement, not necessarily scripted service, but authentic, intuitive service, adaptive the nature in terms of design and service, nurturing when it comes to both the environment that we were building hotels in, but also the communities that we can engage with while our guests are in-house. And most of all, accessible. And this is what Aiana, as a brand, has been built around. Now, with Aiana, we've tried to bring across what we believe is the essence of Indian hospitality. But the idea was to bring it across to the Middle East. We currently have about 1,000 rooms under construction, and I'm proud to say that as a 32-year-old Indian girl, we've managed to also enter into to markets in both Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and currently have 8 hotels under construction. I'm not able to move there we go. So this is an example of our flagship hotel in Doha, and the theme around it really is an Indian soul with a global spirit. Now, it's not often that one gets to create a brand from scratch, and therefore we wanted to make sure that we got all the elements right to bring together what we believe is Hospitality 2.0. Now, one of the things that I connected with what Sachin said earlier was that we're all in businesses that's easy to be passionate about. When it comes to both diamonds and hospitality, what really sets us apart is that we can truly get excited about what we do. My grandfather, Captain Nair, was the face of the Leela brand, and he was a true entrepreneur who started the hospitality business at the age of 65, which is the time when most people choose to retire. I don't believe in good luck. If there is such a thing, it comes to those who dare to act. This is something that he truly lived by. And it was his ability to innovate, take risks, adapt, and succeed against all odds. This was something that was incredible to witness. And it's something that inspires me. The reason it's so important to me is because at every step, for every hotel that my grandfather built, there were mavericks who said that there were people who said that he was a maverick, and this only further fueled his desire to succeed. and history has proved that his vision and self-belief made the impossible possible. My grandfather's dream was to put India on the map, and with Aiana, I hope that I'm continuing to fulfill that dream. The biggest lesson that I learned from him was how he identified what he was truly passionate about, and he lent those elements into the brand. He called himself hotelier, gardener, dreamer. And his favorite joke was about how it was the only company in the world where the gardeners reported directly to the chairman. He was passionate about his gardens, and the hotels he built reflected that passion. And till today, guests identify the brand very strongly with greenery. Inspired by his legacy, I've incorporated a very strong connect with nature to the new brand, Aiana. And even the name Aiana comes from a Sanskrit word that means eternal blossom. So we believe at Aiana that the future will be both high-tech and high-touch. We believe that technology should work for you and should not replace human interaction. TripAdvisor did a study which showed that 93% of travelers strongly agree that despite digital advances, the value of personal service can't be replaced. We believe that technology should replace the administrative side of the interaction and only help you further deepen the personal connect. And one way that we use this in terms of our service design is also in terms of how we collect feedback. So for example, instead of having a guest fill in a feedback form at the end of his journey, we actually interact with him throughout and use modern technology to get instant responses, which helps us not only enhance the interaction, but also improve it while he's still in-house. In the service industry, the hotel and guest relations is changing, and it's a highly competitive space. And one way that hotels get to compete is by using data that we have in order to create a more sustainable and meaningful relationship. The needs of today's travelers are changing. A lot of what Dan talked about earlier in terms of having access, mobility, wanting everything on your fingertips. All of that has implications in terms of how we design our service as well as our products. From on-demand Wi-Fi, keyless check-in, the need to have 24-hour gyms, the on-the-go executive is looking to hotels to provide a platform on which they can work more efficiently and stay healthy while they're on the road. At Aiana, we focused on this in terms of creating spaces, whether it was your room or the lobby or the swimming pool. The idea is that people want to be able to work, play, socialize, and rest all in the same place. I was inspired by a report by Limpicot called The Happiness Halo, which uses recent findings in behavioral economics to drive customer loyalty. And I've adapted that theory to the service industry. So as Richard told me earlier, what you call further downstream. And the idea is to figure out how we can impact those interactions by actually working towards creating the joy of anticipation, the delight of an interaction, and the warmth of a memory. So the easiest way I could figure out how to relate to you the research and the theory behind it is to think of a party. So the temptation arrives with this grand invitation. There's the thrill of finding out who's invited. Even more important is who's not invited, because you want to feel like you're important, and there's a treat element in there. Next comes the actual party. So the people you connect with, it's the jokes, the music, what's for dessert, the actual joy of the engagement. And then what I like to call the post phase, which is the affirmation, the post recall. So it's the nostalgia about the conversations you've had. It's the pictures that are being posted on Facebook, and it's the promise of the next party. So how do we take these elements, the tease, tempt, treat, immerse, personalize, elevate, farewell. How can we build that as brands into the consumer experience? It all begins with anticipation. Now, I'm sure that everyone in the room will agree with me when I say that human beings are tuned to enjoy the chase. Happiness experts at Stanford say that survival instinct is hardwired to prioritize seeking over finding. So wanting is actually better than having. And so the research has proven that anticipating a pleasurable event or experience is almost as good as actually finishing it. So the example here would be of an exam or a marathon. So how does a brand build the pre-phase, the joy of anticipation? So we begin with the tease. Alexander McQueen did this wonderfully when they launched their perfume. They refused to even tell anyone what it was called. I mean, if you can see from the image here, it was all about the mystery. In the Indian context, I suppose the classic example would be a Bollywood film that releases a catchy song before the movie is released. Next, we have tempt. How can you, as a brand, make your customers look forward to more? One way that we do this is to try and get the customer to interact with the brand even before they've physically entered the building. Research shows that scientifically, when someone's exposed to even a new image or a product, just intermittent exposure creates a familiarity, even if they don't know it or not. And this works, and you'll see it. Politicians use it all the time. Just the fact that you see them all the time builds that familiarity and trust. Hotels do this by allowing you to visit their rooms, the lobbies, their public spaces through virtual tours. And the idea is to actually help them tangibilize the interaction even before they enter. Next, we have treat. So how do you make the offer limited or reframe the experience? Everything is more attractive when availability is limited. Another way to approach this is by making the mundane exciting. So car companies do this all the time. Rather than making it about the long commute home, it's all about the journey and the wonderful features inside and how that's the experience. Another way to do this is by reframing something that's ordinary and making it something that you look forward to. The way we've gone about this at Aiana is to create what we're calling the Aiana bedscape, which makes even a compulsory business trip an opportunity to catch up on a good night's sleep. And finally, we have interaction. According to the Department of Psychology at Harvard, we're easily distracted, but we're happiest when we're most focused. So the question really is that the onus really lies on us as a brand to get that customer to fully engage. So how does a brand get complete engagement and complete immersion? Well, the answer is quite simple. My mom has the answer. If she wants us to focus on dinner, she just takes away our phones. We get to do this at Aiana through our spa experience, where with a truly immersive spa ambience, they get to feel like they're leaving everything else outside. The next slide I have is on personalize. How can I make my guest feel superior? Now, our customers want to make decisions, but the entire process of actually making them can be quite stressful and tedious. So what we have done at Aiana is added surprise delight elements using information that's already available to us. So the decision only has to be made once on arrival, and we track that using our loyalty programs and our guest preferences so that we know exactly what the guest wants before they arrive. Starbucks as a brand has done this very well. Now, what they made you really do is get you to pay $7 for a cup of coffee by simply making it truly special and all about you. Now, I'm rather boring. My coffee still costs $1.80 because I'm a tall Americano. But if you go in there and you ask for a mocha frappuccino with whipped cream and sprinkles, and you get your name written on the side of the cup, that's how they get you to pay the $7 by taking personalization to another level. We do this at Aiana through an intuitive service, so a little bit more subtle. Elevate. So how can my brand make the guest feel truly superior to others? Happiness is always relative. So I may have just come back from a wonderful weekend break, but it will still bother me when a friend posts pictures of her 2-week holiday in Italy, even though I've just arrived, from a wonderful holiday myself. So the question to ask is, how can my brand make my guests feel superior? One of the ways we do this at Aiana is through our discovery program. So what we would do is offer pre-sale deals for people to book their holidays before we open it up to the market, because everyone loves an off-market deal. And so it's all about perkonomics. The last part is reinforce. And this one's a little bit tricky, and it's built around the idea of association. For a positive interaction, it is important for that happiness moment to resonate. The way we do this at Aiana, for example, is to give a guest a recipe to take home with them so that they can recreate that delight of that meal when they get back home. The same, however, works for negative associations as well. So for example, if a customer's had a negative association, it's up to us to use that as an opportunity to create a happy moment. By bombarding them with feedback forms and customer surveys, all you're doing is making them relive that negative moment. And so what Stanford's happiness experts have found is that while exciting brands actually recovered from after a transgression, the really sincere brands, the ones who truly wanted to know what went wrong, never recovered from that relationship. So the idea really is to find an interrupter and give the customer something new and surprising to think about. Southwest Airlines did this very well, and I have a little video for you to show you how they approached this particular problem.
My husband and I were going on a vacation, getting out of the heat of Dallas in the summer, and about halfway there, the pilot came on and said, "There's some things going on in Denver, folks. We're headed back to Amarillo."
When we got to Amarillo, we ended up having to sit on the ground for quite some time because the thunderstorm wouldn't move off the field. I heard someone was talking about how they were getting close to running out of food up there. Turned to one of the captain that was with me and said, "Hey, why don't we get some pizza for everybody?" Had the delivery guy call me when he actually got to the airport, so I went outside and picked up the pizzas. And believe it or not, 15 pizzas is kind of, weighs more than you think. Grabbed those and ran back through the security. Of course, all the TSA wanted, a slice. And I told them no. They were real nice about it, but they had to x-ray every single pizza.
When the call came that it was clear and we could head to Denver, we got to leave first. And all of a sudden, here comes one of the flight attendants with all these pizzas. So we asked our flight attendant, what happened, and she said the pilot has brought pizza for the plane and we'll serve it when we take off. I think everybody was expecting our peanuts, and then the pizza came out. So here's thanks for the pizza. Oh. It really meant a lot.
You're very welcome.
Cheers. All right, cheers.
So not always does fast food work as a solution, but essentially the moral of the story here is if you don't have a solution, distract. And finally, we have nostalgia. How do you end strong? What's your brand's last impression, and how do you create that happy memory? The truth is that no matter how great a meal or how wonderful your holiday, no one ever likes to pay the bill. The Chinese food industry in America, and that's why the fortune cookie was actually invented, they figured out how to soften the blow, present the cookie to distract you from the actual payment. So here comes my story about mints. In a controlled study, waiters who gave mints along with their bill got a 3% got 3% more in tips. Waiters who came to the table handed over the check and then individually handed out mints to every guest at the table got 14% higher tips. Waiters who brought the mints to the table along with the bill and then came back hurriedly and handed them out and said, you know, I thought you guys could do with some more, got 20% more tips. So the moral of the story, and I promise you this is the last story that I have for you today, is that mints matter. So I have mints for you to take back with you, and I hope that it was somewhat, and the idea was to just give you a little bit of a flavor of how we look at service design and how every opportunity there is an opportunity to create that moment of happiness. Thank you very much for having me.